Hey guys, thank you for joining me today here in Planet Zoo. In today's video we'll be doing a speed build of a walkthrough koala habitat. We're back in the Italian Island Zoo here, and I wanted to start with this walkthrough habitat because I haven't yet used any of the Australia pack animals, which is a great shame because it's a fantastic pack and the koalas look great. So we're going to try and incorporate them into this build here with a greenhouse style walkthrough. I got the idea from having a look at the botanical gardens in northern Italy. I wanted that kind of feel for this part of the zoo. The zoo's based on an island in northern Italy, so having some geographical areas where we have some of the plants and some of the animals from those regions, I think will fit nicely with the theme. I found some nice looking greenhouses on Google Earth to use as inspiration, but they're all a lot narrower. This one's a lot wider, so we got enough space for the koalas. So the challenge I was having here is, as I was building it, I was thinking this is beginning to look like an industrial building. So at the moment I'm just playing about with some of the limestone columns, the arches, the different decorations to try and make it look a bit fancier. Hopefully the koalas will fit nicely in here. One of the challenges with this kind of build is I wanted to keep the Italian theming to fit with the island, but also incorporate Australia. So this was quite a challenge. I wasn't sure how I was going to do this setting out here. I was largely making this up as I went along and just seeing where I got. At this point here, I was trying to give the plaster effect for the inside of the building, and I managed to waste about 20 or 30 minutes putting in the concrete pieces and struggling to match the colours. So I eventually got there with the plaster pieces and threw on this glass roof. So I'm happy with the way it's beginning to come together. Just starting to put in now the habitat door. So you can see there was a bit of messing around here with the different pieces to try and get it all to line up. The idea is that the staff will use this side door, and I'm going to put in the staff facilities alongside just to have it all neatly together. And have the guests walking through the centre here, and using this as a loop from the main path, so we can't have one way in the game, but we can imagine that in a real life setting they would enter from the left hand side and follow a one way system through. I'm just now trimming off the roof line here. There was a lot of moving around of stuff trying to line it up. I was struggling to get things to line up and get things so I was happy with them. But I think it all came together in the end. It's just very, very fiddly trying to do some of these roof lines like this. So I probably made this a lot harder than it could have been. But I think the result was alright in the end. Of course, in my attempt to make it look less like a big industrial warehouse, I think it was starting to look more and more like one. Very, very hard decorating these kind of large empty buildings. But when we start to get some of the plants, the foliage and the rock work inside, I think it started to come together alright. Here I was just wanting to smooth off the transition from the wall to the roof. I thought it looked a bit abrupt there. Decided to put in some of these metal ducts and the air conditioning units here, which of course has made it look even more industrial. Not what I was intending, but I'll keep it as it is. What I'm doing now is just putting these pipe works in. A lot of the images I was seeing online of these kind of greenhouses, especially in the botanical gardens, had these hanging irrigation systems from the roof of the greenhouses. I wanted to produce something similar, but if you've ever seen a picture of a wet koala bear, you'd know that having a sprinkler system in a koala habitat would probably give the guests nightmares. So instead I'm using this as a lighting rig. Just having a look now for the different types of lighting that we can suspend, and I went for this one that came from the European pack. They don't really give off huge amounts of light, but as a decorative feature I think it works quite well in this build. And again, lots of just fiddling around with all these pieces just to get them to line up properly. I built it outside the building because I think it's easier to work on looking down without the roof there, and I'd already put the roof in place, so building it outside and slotting it in just worked a little bit easier. And once again now, just finishing off with some of the details, and we'll get on to the staff facilities. I'd already placed the staff room and the keeper's hut, but I've moved them in to be on the same grid as the main building here. They are quite close to the path behind. That might need to be addressed later, but for now they can just sit there, they can be in the cliff a little bit. And then spending quite a lot of time here fiddling about with these paths just to get them lined up. I wanted this little staircase up in the back. I do want that to be a staff path, but while I was building it I left it as the main guest path. I forgot to switch it over, so the guests are still using that, but we can sort that out later. Just create this little covered walkway through from the habitat to the staff facilities. These staff facilities will cover a number of habitats both here and on the top layer, the top path behind here, so I've tried to use the larger staff room and keeper's hut. I think they sit alright in the space here, and this is where I wanted to switch to the Italian theming. I wanted to make sure it still fitted with the rest of the zoo here to have the Italian style. I wanted this little balcony sticking out here, and again took quite a long time trying to find pieces that worked and line everything up. And there we go, we've got the roof in, we've got the balcony in, and we can now start looking at the doors and the windows. I've only kept the front window for the staff room and the keeper's hut open because the back ones were coming in either in the ground or below ground on the rear level, so I've blocked those off, but I'll keep the front windows in place. And just lining up the path here and decorating a little bit around here just to blend it in a little bit. Inside here I'm flitting around a little bit, but I wanted to just get some of the soil and the sand down on the ground, get rid of some of this grass. And here's the doors, and we'll go for the windows and the trimming. I think with any of these buildings, just putting in the shutters, some of the limestone trim, it really makes a difference to the building. What I did forget to do though on this one is use the Europe pack decals to put cracks, dirt, that kind of thing around the building. It's not a problem, I can go back and do that later, but it will help age the property, weather it a little bit. But for now, I think it's starting to take shape. As I build the zoo here, what I'm hoping to do is have a path going around the perimeter and then up through the middle, going through various different themed zones, but still obviously keeping the Italian theming for the zoo overall. But this area down here, we've got the koalas. I'm thinking of having one or two more Australian themed habitats, maybe some kangaroos or the cassowaries. I'm not sure yet which one I'm going to go for. And then follow it round. There's going to be an Amazon section, then a European section. There's going to be a fairly natural Italian area with some of the horses, some of the the deer, that kind of thing. But for now, in this Australian section, I wanted to try and at least show that it was Australian, so we've gone for some of the signs here. I did mess around a little bit with all the different options, see what would fit. So I was originally going to put this Australian map up on the wall, but it didn't look that great there, so we've got this as a freestanding sign. And put some of the text over. I've been trying to incorporate the Italian language into some of the signage here, but I don't speak Italian, so if anybody watching this does, and you've noticed any mistakes I'm making, please let me know and I can hop back in and change this. I'm stuck with using Google Translate on this and hoping I'm getting at least close. Now, round the back here, I'm not wanting to do too much work on the back until I sort out the top path properly, because I might be moving where the path is. But I just wanted to put these gates and some rock work around this rear path and the steps leading up, just so it doesn't look completely incomplete around the back here. Like I said, I did forget to change this to being a staff path, so at the moment the guests are walking straight through the fence. That can be changed. And back inside, I'm going to use the red desert or the Australian desert rocks here to just trim off the path and to act as almost like a paint on the floor. I'd love to be able to have the different terrain paints for the different biomes that we can use anywhere, but for now, using the rocks is a good workaround. Tried to include some of the Australian plants here. I wanted to try and find some of the trees that are climbable, so the koalas have got somewhere to climb, and I've got the smaller ones in here, but I wanted to use the larger eucalyptus trees, and I think there's the gum tree. They wouldn't fit in the greenhouse, so I've put them around the outside. I don't think that really matters. I think they look quite nice around the edge, and as always, rocks and trees really make a difference here. I'm feeling a lot better now we've got some trees in about how the greenhouse itself's looking. It was tempting to keep a lot of this space clear and have it more a deserty kind of feel, but a lot of the Australian area is heavily forested. You've got the tropical areas, you've got the koalas themselves living in the trees, so I thought making it too sparse wasn't really going to work very well for this. So there are a lot more trees here than I was originally setting out for, but I'm quite happy with this. And a little raised platform here. I thought having the bedding for the koalas off the ground would look quite nice. It might also raise them up a little bit so they're less stressed by the guests. The enrichment items as well, I was having trouble finding places for them to sit. The path and the barrier of the habitat was causing collision, so some of them aren't exactly where I wanted them, and the feeding platform here, I'd have preferred that to have been risen up off the ground a little bit, but with a little bit of rock work here, I'm happy with it now. And we're just finishing off now with some of the sunshades. I thought they would make quite good stands for the information panels. I did play around a little bit off camera here with some different options, but I wasn't happy with them, so we've gone with this option. And then finally finishing off with some of the artwork on the walls. I like these little wooden koala pieces. It broke up the wall a little bit, and again, some of these plain brick areas, I thought using some of these Australian art pieces looked good, but as you can see here, some of them didn't look so good, so there was a lot of trial and error here to see where we'd get to. And then finally we're just filling in the borders here with some plants. I tried to use as many of the Australian plants as I could, but also for some of these larger areas I was just sinking some of the bushes in, some of the vines and things, just to create overgrowth so it didn't look quite so sparse. And finally, here we go, these areas which I wanted slightly more deserty. I used a lot of the rocks there. Like I said, I'd have liked to have had some of the terrain paints here. I think in a real zoo setting, having some of the sand or the soil that matched the area would work quite well. We don't have that option in game, so I'll use the rocks now to simulate it. I've put in some of these terracotta pots. I created a terracotta pot set, so I've coloured these planters in a terracotta colour. That just gives it a little bit of consistency throughout the zoo. I like the idea of having these planters just scattered around. It makes it look a little bit more cohesive through the zoo. And I am quite pleased with how that's come out. I added far more than I was originally planning to. I wanted this to be quite open. I wanted a more deserty kind of vibe to it, but the building just looked a bit sparse at the front without having these planters, and I'm quite happy with how that's come out. I like the planters being in there. A few final tweaks, and then we should be able to think about getting our animals in. So with that, we are now pretty much complete with this build. There were a few tweaks I did off camera just to make sure the traversable areas worked for the koalas. We've got 1 male and 3 females moving in from the trade centre, so I will leave you now to enjoy the cinematics of them enjoying their new home. Well, I hope you enjoyed my first speed build. If you'd like to see more, please press like and subscribe, it really does help. So I'd love to hear your feedback below, and see you next time.